The Red Satin Flag of Resistance by Mark Sadler. Gerald and Cathy's forbidden love existed in defiance of a powerful dating algorithm which had declared them mutually incompatible. They first met in the lobby of the Wayward Hearts dating agency, where they were waiting to be provided with the identities of their ideal partners, selected for them through the impartial medium of computer software. A conversation concerning a rise in parking charges had quickly blossomed into friendship. They had departed prematurely, walking away hand in hand, to the horror of the agency manager, Linda Jolly, who, ever since that day, had been determined to correct this cosmic imbalance. "I don't understand why you would pay for the premium advice that comes with platinum-level membership and then leave without hearing it," she said, chastising Cathy down the phone. On her laptop screen, an arrow hovered over a blank field on a spreadsheet. She wondered what she should write in the empty box. Well, it wasn't a failure. Gerald and Cathy had found love at her agency. But they'd found love with the wrong people! Their unsanctioned coupling was an anomaly that threw into doubt the accuracy of all her computer programs and all the pairings it had assembled. "Maybe it would help if you sat down with the creator of the software. Well, he could explain why the two of you were so poorly matched," she advised. The architect of the dating algorithm was Linda's nephew, Nigel Parrish, a myopic, acne-dusted teenager with a head shaped like a pummeled rugby ball, topped with a thinning mop of brown hair that resembled a toupee. "I based the software on the Oredaeus Saga, a series of science fantasy novels penned by Matt Vanderson Jr., he explained. "It concerns a civilization who inhabit a galaxy located inside God's right ear. The warrior priests on these prayer planets compete to sway the mind of the deity and control the universe. My software analyses the results of personality tests and sorts candidates into one of 10 categories based on prominent characters in the saga. Miss Farrell, you are most aligned with Erenthia, a warrior bridesmaid of the Osovale sect. You, Mr. Glazier, are practically a carbon copy of the chief purger, Harloff. The thought of these two characters forming a romantic bond is laughable." Nigel's guffaw was cut short by his breath jarring his blocked sinuses. "Put simply, your relationship is likely to be the contemporary equivalent of a midnight crossbow duel fought in the magenta box canyons of the Gyorgyom substrate." "Well, answer the question about liking pina colada flippantly. Could that have had any bearing on the result?" inquired Cathy. "Well, I included that question to root out flippancy in candidates of a certain age. You fell for my ruse, like Erenthia fell into Yolanda's mirror prism in the novel The Election Department." "Oh," said Cathy, looking so crestfallen that Gerald felt obliged to come to her defence. "If I may ask, what qualifies you to pass judgment on our relationship? Have you ever even had a girlfriend?" "After consultation with my mother, I have decided to delay my interest in women until I have turned 22 or am crowned county chess champion, whichever occurs first. Given that the parents of the current champion, Tara Pardesi, have decided not to move to Derby, the latter scenario seems unlikely." "But you needn't worry," said Linda, rushing in to save the day. "I have the perfect partners waiting to sweep you off your feet. No crossbows after dark, just scattered rose petals and romantic dinners." The partners who had been selected for Gerald and Cathy were another problem. Eileen Potham, the woman chosen as a mate for Gerald, created jewellery modelled on designs originally worn by harpies, a race of rapacious bird women who had plagued ancient Greece.
Well, I'm not sure I want to date a woman who knowingly dresses as a harpy,
he protested to Linda, who ignored him. Cathy had been matched with James Tuckwell, a stockbroker who collected china pigs. Eileen and James had formed an alliance dedicated to the reeling in of their fugitive ideal partners. This coalition had developed into an engagement, with a date set for a wedding, all predicated on the understanding that they would break up as soon as Gerald and Cathy came to their senses. To escape their persecutors, Gerald and Cathy sought sanctuary in the last place that anybody would look. Their love was a rose, blooming amidst the silent guns in the Battle of the Somme exhibit at the Imperial War Museum. Large artillery pieces were lined up along one side of the cavernous hallway. Opposite stood a lengthy replica of a First World War trench. A sign at the entrance announced the recent addition of resin puddles, based on actual puddles in photographs from the period. They made their way along the trench, in between the mannequins dressed as British soldiers. Cathy flung herself wantonly against the steep sandbag wall.
Take me over the top!
Gerald yanked off her underwear and was immediately unsure what to do with it. She snatched the red satin knickers, casting them high into the air, their trajectory triggering a motion sensor that unleashed a volley of recorded rifle and machine gun fire. With their passions inflamed, they embraced, Cathy's fingers closing convulsively around the plastic hand of a nearby mannequin, modelled on the war poet Wilfred Owen. From somewhere inside the dummy, a hidden speaker began to intone the poem Dulce et decorum est. Wilfred Owen is throwing me off my stride, grunted Gerald, as the hidden narrator described in gruesome detail the effects of a chlorine gas attack.
Chin up, Dunkirk spirit!
Gasped Cathy.
It's still a long way to Tipperary!
Afterwards, they huddled together, wrapped in Wilfred Owen's blanket.
If I have a son, I shall name him Wilfred,
said Cathy dreamily. They scaled a trench ladder, emerging into the shadow of a piece of artillery the length of 2 London buses. Cathy's underwear had snagged on the tip of the angled gun barrel, 20 feet above the ground, dangling like the sloughed-off garter of a can-can dancer.
Oh, it's a 320mm French railway gun,
said Gerald, reading off a small plaque.
But it's wearing my knickers! How on earth do we get them back?
Gerald pondered on what Archimedes would have done in this situation. Neither of them heard the softly approaching footsteps.
Maybe I can be of service.
Startled, they turned to confront an elderly gentleman with a grey moustache. He was carrying a long metal pole. The name tag on his uniform read Ronald Wells. He stared towards the stranded underwear.
Oh, yeah, it's good to see the old 320 getting some love. Those tracks embedded in the floor used to join with the London Underground network. Yeah, up until 1987, this gun would have been mobilised in the defence of Dalston.
Oh, God, I'm mortified,
said Cathy.
Oh, don't worry, love, it happens here all the time. Yeah, we had to remove the FV4005 from display. Couples like the long gun, if you catch my drift. Yeah.
Ronald began to pump one of the 3 levers at the end of his pole, which telescoped outwards, bending like a fishing rod as it gained height. Cathy's knickers had slipped further down the barrel, where they resembled a fragment of erotic semaphore, suspended somberly at half-mast. Ronald depressed another lever, and a pair of pincers latched onto them.
My grandfather was held in an officer's camp during the war. Well, he designed this appliance to snip the wire fence and escape. Well, one day, there was a royal parade heading towards Trafalgar Square, and somebody had snagged a giant pair of bloomers on top of Nelson's column. Well, my grandfather raced down there with his wire snipper and removed them before the king arrived. Yeah, he got an OBE for that. And I inherited his tool. I brought it along with me to my job interview here and was hired on the spot.
The pole began to retract gradually until it was back to its original size. Ronald opened the pincers, depositing the knickers into Cathy's yawning handbag. Over tea, the couple explained their present difficulties.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that happened in the First World War, said Ronald. 2 generals, one English, one German, Farley and Ringskopf, both very well thought of. Well, when fighting broke out, large wagers were placed by military types on who would come out victorious when they went head to head. Oh, the men felt the weight of expectation on them, and they kept putting off engaging with each other. Well, the chiefs on both sides were adamant they should duke it out, but it wasn't happening. Finally, some bright spark fibbed to General Haig that Farley and Ringskopf were distant cousins who used to holiday in Somerset together. Farley was sent to fight on a different front, and everyone got back to the business of killing each other. Well, my point is, if you can change the story, you can change the outcome.
My God, that's brilliant!
Exclaimed Cathy.
All we need to do is pay a visit to the man who writes those dreadful fantasy novels, convince him to publish one where Erenthia and Harloth fall in love. Nigel will factor that into his algorithm, and Linda, James and Eileen will leave us alone. Oh, Ronald, if I have a second-born son, I will definitely name him after you.
Matt Vanderson Jr., author of over 300 science fantasy novels and a coffee table book about ovens, lived in a grotty seaside terrace in Hastings. My father wrote manuals for kitchen appliances, he said, welcoming them in. He was multilingual, so he did all the foreign language translations himself. I have Anderson to write your instruction sheet and you'll never need no other bloke, is what they used to say. Well, I knew it to be foolish to try and follow in his footsteps, so I went into fiction. Propped up on an easel in the front room was the enlarged concept art for a new novel entitled Purge My Vision, Said the Bliss Clown. Now in Holland it's coming out under the title Sex Slaves of Rees-Mogg Prime. Yeah, well, they're all more open-minded on the continent. The young couple outlined their predicament to him.
So, what we were hoping is that you would write a novel where Erenthia and Harloth forego any further cliff-top dagger fights and settle down in a loving monogamous relationship,
said Gerald.
And to show our appreciation, we will name our third-born son after you.
Added Cathy. Third-born?
Well, it's a bit of a queue building up.
A letter from the Wayward Hearts dating agency arrived in June. In it, Linda apologised for a glitch in the computer system and gave her full blessing to the union of Cathy and Gerald. Eileen and James called off their pursuit, married, and then killed each other on their 12th anniversary in a midnight crossbow duel. Gerald and Cathy attended the funeral, Outside, in the churchyard, their children, Wilfred, Ronald and Matt Jr., chased one another up and down the rows of gravestones. One Valentine's Day, many years later, Nigel Parrish reflected upon his early life as a matchmaker.
Oh, I was a fool to think the Auredeus saga could be a credible basis for a dating algorithm. Clearly Lena Callan's Chronicles of the Pisces Core offers a far better foundation.
Nige, are you coming to bed?
He swiveled round in his office chair. His partner, Tara Pardeshi, who had recently been crowned chess grandmaster, was leaning seductively against the doorframe, dressed as the octospawn navigator from Eric McClear's novel Star Shrike. Her face softened into a come-hither look as she beckoned him with a latex tentacle.